on the House of Representatives, on the Senate, on America, on democracy itself. The insurrection that was violently perpetrated by enemy combatants and seditionists was an attempt to halt a constitutional process and overthrow the government. It was an act of sedition that was incited and encouraged by Donald Trump. And that's why he must be held accountable to the full extent of the law. President Trump has engaged in irresponsible behavior for years. This is nothing new, but it is the logical culmination of his willingness to perpetrate lie after lie after lie, undermine our democracy, and march the United States of America toward authoritarianism. We will not allow it to happen. The seditionists who attacked the Capitol wanted to stop members of Congress from doing our job. They failed. We returned to the floor of the House of Representatives to certify the election of Joe Biden and to complete our work under the Constitution of the United States of America. We will never allow mob rule to prevail. We will continue to uplift the rule of law. It's my honor to be joined by members of the congressional delegation, all of whom will speak to the issues that occurred in the attempted insurrection against the United States of America, as well as the way forward. Let me simply say this. Donald Trump must be removed from office immediately. He should be impeached, convicted, and thrown out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and forever banished to the dustbin of history. Every second, every minute, every day that Donald Trump remains in office presents a clear and present danger to the health, safety, and well-being of the American people and our democracy. That is why the House is pursuing every available means at our disposal to accomplish the objective of holding the President of the United States accountable. The seat of government in America was attacked on Wednesday. The congressional delegation thought it appropriate that we convene upon returning to the districts that we represent here in New York City to stand at the seat of government of our beloved Big Apple. And I'm so thankful that as a result of the leadership of Mayor de Blasio, he was able to work with us, facilitate this gathering to demonstrate to the city and the country that we stand united and we will defend our democracy no matter what it takes, and decency will once again prevail in the United States of America. So thank you, Mayor de Blasio, for your leadership. As we say in Washington, I now yield to the distinguished gentleman from the great city of New York and the People's Republic of Brooklyn, Bill de Blasio.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Jeffries. Thank you for your leadership. Look around you, everyone. These members of Congress who serve us, their lives were in danger that day. The people who work for them, their lives were in danger. Everyone was put in danger because of a rebellion that was somehow tolerated, that was aided and abetted by Donald Trump, created by Donald Trump and Josh Hawley and so many others, somehow tolerated by security forces. Look behind you at City Hall. Can you imagine? A lot of you have spent time here. Can you imagine a mob taking over this building? It's never happened. It will never happen in New York City. But it happened in Washington, D.C. Why? And I support Congressman Bowman's efforts for have a full investigation, because someone gave the order to let that happen, and we need to know who, and they must be punished. But when I think of my friends, these good people I've served with for years, that they were in danger and democracy was in danger, it's very clear what the result must be. Donald Trump must go now. Now. Anyone who is that treasonous, anyone who has lost control of his mental abilities to that level as to start an insurrection against the United States should not have his finger on the nuclear button. He needs to resign right now. And you may say, well, he's not going to do it. Well, then Vice President Pence used the 25th Amendment. And you may say, well, that's not politically convenient for Vice President Pence. Well, then thank God for these people, these members of Congress who will impeach Donald Trump, because we need them to. We need them to protect America and protect American democracy. Thank you, every single one of you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. Let me now yield to the distinguished chair of the House Oversight Committee, the Honorable Carolyn Maloney.
Thank you, Hakeem Jeffries, for leading us in this press conference and leading us as the president and the leader, the chair of our caucus. I thank our mayor for joining us and all of my colleagues for their leadership in Congress and their committees and in this crisis that we're confronting. We just lived through one of the darkest days in American history. I was shocked. I never believed that the Capitol would be stormed by domestic terrorists and that they would be successful in entering and disrupting the work of Congress. We were meeting, as required by our Constitution, to review the electoral votes and to ratify them. They stormed the room, took over. I am still in shock over what happened. But what is even more shocking is that the President of the United States instigated, led, abetted, was part of this insurrection and disruption of our democracy and our sacred example, our capital of our democracy. He is incapable of leading. He cannot be trusted. He should resign immediately. He is a clear threat to our democracy. If he does not resign, then the leaders of our country have to meet and move forward with the 25th Amendment to remove him from office. If they do not act, then this Congress will go back next week and we will move forward with the second impeachment of Donald J. Trump. As chair of the Oversight Committee, I have sent a letter to the FBI. The FBI is the federal agency that we have jurisdiction over, joined by 4 other chairmen, asking for a thorough investigation and an emergency meeting on Monday, which they have allowed. We will be meeting with them Monday afternoon with a review and accounting of what did they do to get ready to protect our people, our residents, to protect our Capitol. These threats were all over the internet. Everyone knew about it. What was their role in protecting us? What was their role that day to defend the Capitol and to defend the people? And what are they doing now to hold people accountable and to make sure this never happens again? Those who allowed this attempted coup should all resign. We must protect our democracy. I would now like to recognize the distinguished Nydia Velasquez, chairwoman of the Small Business Committee and my very good friend. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Jeffries, Mr. Mayor, for hosting us, and to all my colleagues for being here. America was attacked by a mob of domestic terrorists incited by a U.S. sitting president. Imagine that for a moment. The president of the United States of America instigated a mob to go and give a coup d'etat because he was not this egomaniac, didn't want to recognize the fact that the people of this country elected Joe Biden as president of the United States. A president whose first sacred constitutional duty is to protect our homeland from threats, both domestic and foreign. And I have been clear, every single Republican who stood by the monstrosity that is Donald Trump has blood on their hands. Trump is unhinged, and I do not want to hear one more person in power who enable him absolve themselves of responsibility for what happened on Wednesday. So this has been a painful and cruel 4 years for our country. And this is not the first time Trump has merited calls for removal from office. But now, even with less than 2 weeks before the inauguration, we need him out. He is a threat to our national security. He is a threat to all of us. He is a threat to America. I have called for any constitutional means necessary to remove him immediately. Instead of resigning and trying to save face, like Betsy DeVos, Elaine Chao, members of his cabinet ought to be invoking the 25th Amendment. For once, do right on behalf of the American people. Don't tell me that all of a sudden you are surprised and horrified. You know from day one when he came down those stairs in his hotel what he was about. We have been warning America, and we have been warning the Republican leadership. Where were they for the last 4 years when this president separated children from their families? Where were they when this president continued to use rhetoric and hatred to divide America? And all of a sudden, they are horrified. Lindsey Graham, give me a break. But we are not holding our breath. Democrats in Congress are ready to vote to impeach. The American people deserve so much better than the gaslighting that has been propagated by President Trump and every congressional Republican who stand by his coup to undermine a free and fair election. So we are going to act next week, and we are going to impeach, and we are going to show the world that America is stronger than Donald Trump. Thank you.
I'm Congressman Gregory Meeks, and indeed, it's a sad day in these United States of America and all over the world. An attempted coup d'etat took place at the People's House last Wednesday. And the person who, in my estimation, was the commander-in-chief, not of the United States of America, but the commander-in-chief of those who went and violently tried to do a coup. That man is named Donald J. Trump. We heard him say to the Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. Then we heard repeatedly him say to them and others, make sure you come to Washington, D.C. on January 6th and send a message that had never been heard before. We heard him on the 6th summon everybody to first the White House and had his henchmen get them all fired up and gave them directions to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue to come to the Capitol. He does not fit the office of president and needs to leave immediately. He is a threat to the national order, and he is a threat to the international world order. What he has done and how he has led puts our national security at stake. I can't tell you, as chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, how many of our allies called me saying they couldn't believe their eyes of what was taking place in the United States of America. I can't tell you how many ambassadors and other international legislators called and said, if this can happen in America, it can happen anywhere, threatening the world's order. This man must go. The camera of history is rolling. And that camera, your cameras, will show what we did or didn't do at our time of crises. The United States Congress cannot sit by at this time and do nothing. And that's why we will go back next week if he doesn't resign on his own, or if the 25th Amendment is not invoked. The camera of history will record that the House of Representatives did the job that they were supposed to do. And then I would hope the Senate and anyone else would do the job that they were supposed to do. But we will make sure that the world knows that the United States of America still is governed by rules of law, and we will stand, and nobody is above the law, especially Donald J. Trump. I now would like to call up a fighter, member of the Appropriations Committee, Adriano Espaillat, Congressman Adriano Espaillat.
Thank you, Congressman Meeks. Every time we're taken off to office, we swear to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Donald Trump is a domestic enemy. His collaborators are domestic enemies. I say collaborators because there were people around him that aided and abetted these urban terrorists that assaulted democracy and the Capitol, including Rudy Giuliani, who right here led a riot against Mayor Dinkins. Let's not forget that. Rudy Giuliani led a riot here, right in front of City Hall, against Mayor Dinkins. He is a predicate felon. He is a predicate felon and should be arrested. Donald Trump's children were involved in this as well. And so we must proceed with a quick and swift impeachment. Nearly 4 years ago, I was part of the first 6 members of Congress to call for an impeachment. I stand here today to say we must impeach him again. And leave it to the Senate. We have the tools in the House to do it ourselves. Let's see who in the Senate will be on the right or in the wrong side of history. Estamos aquí para decir que cada vez que nos juramentamos para asegurar que protegemos y defendemos la Constitución de enemigos extranjeros y domésticos. Donald Trump es un enemigo doméstico y sus colaboradores también, incluyendo Rudy Giuliani, quien dirigió un motín aquí mismo contra el alcalde David Dinkins. Hace 4 años yo comencé con 5 otros legisladores un proceso de destitución. Estamos aquí de nuevo pidiendo un proceso de destitución de Donald Trump y sus colaboradores para restaurar la democracia. Gracias. Ahora le presento, and now I introduce to you a great colleague from Nassau County, Congressman Tom Suozzi.
Thank you, Adriano. Yeah, I do have the great honor of also representing Queens, and thank you for bringing me here today, Hakeem, Mayor. This is not just about holding Donald Trump accountable for his irresponsible and reprehensible behavior. When you heard Hakeem say he was a clear and present danger, what does that mean? What if Donald Trump was to again call on his rabid supporters to come back again to Washington, D.C.? What if Donald Trump was to pardon the people that were arrested this past Wednesday and Thursday and will be arrested over the next couple of weeks? What would happen if Donald Trump were to pardon the other collaborators in this insurrection? He is a clear and present danger. The next 11 days could be some of the most important in our nation's history. And we need to be prepared, not scared. I'm not trying to scare people, but we need to be prepared. Because this man has demonstrated that he's reckless, irresponsible, and only motivated by his own ego. We must do everything we can to encourage our Republican colleagues to call on him to resign. And if he won't resign, for them to support the efforts of invoking the 25th Amendment. And if that won't work, we need them to join us in impeaching this president. Because under Article 2, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, if the president is impeached, he cannot pardon people for actions related to his impeached behavior. We must hold Donald Trump accountable, but we also must protect ourselves over the next 11 days. And after Joe Biden comes into the presidency, we can begin to heal our country and come together and find common ground to try and move forward. But it cannot be done until Donald Trump is, number one, held accountable, and number two, removed from office. Let me now introduce a new member of the United States Congress, our new colleague, Jamal Bowman.
Good morning, everyone. I am not okay this morning, and the people in my district are not okay. And from what I'm hearing and seeing across the country, the entire country is on edge today. And we should be, because domestic terrorists waged war against the United States government on Wednesday. And they were incited and motivated by Donald Trump. Therefore, Donald Trump must be removed from office immediately, whether it's via resignation, invoking the 25th Amendment, or impeachment. We are going to do what we have to do as members of Congress. But I also want to say that what Donald Trump has incited and what he continues to inspire is something called white nationalism and white supremacy. And white nationalism did not begin with Donald Trump. White nationalism and white supremacy is as old as the United States of America. And every time our nation has made forward social progress, white backlash has occurred. We can go back as far as the enactment of the 13th Amendment and the freeing of the slaves. After those slaves were free, they were supposed to receive 40 acres to toil and live on. What happened after that? Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. The Confederate secessionists were pardoned. Their land was given back to them, and slaves had to go back to work for their masters, earning pennies on the dollar. It happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when African Americans built a community for themselves to live safely. Unfortunately, it was burned down by white terrorists. It happened this past week after Georgia became completely blue for the first time in our nation's history. The following day, war was waged against the United States by domestic terrorists. The issue in the moment is absolutely Donald Trump. But for us to move forward and truly become an exceptional nation that includes everyone, we have to stare white nationalism in the face, and we have to deal with it directly. Not only through law enforcement, but by recognizing that white nationalism lives in every American institution, because the disproportionality that we see in our criminal justice system lives in every American system. And our bill that we are introducing in Congress is going to look at how white nationalism might exist within Capitol Police as part of a thorough investigation. Because as we experienced Wednesday's horrible events, my first question was, how the hell were they able to penetrate the Capitol? Why were Capitol Police so undermanned and overwhelmed so quickly? Why wasn't there more coordination between Capitol Police, Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI in preparation for this event? So many unanswered questions, and that's why we need a thorough investigation. And as we've seen on the media, some of the Capitol Police let the rioters into the Capitol. So, yes, Donald Trump needs to be removed immediately, but let's finally, as a nation, from local, state, to the federal government, call white supremacy what it is, domestic terrorism, and deal with it accordingly throughout every American institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamal. Thank you, Mayor de Blasio, and to all my colleagues in government. Questions?
We're monitoring very, very closely. No real and specific threats directed to New York City at this moment. There are some small demonstrations planned for tomorrow that we are carefully monitoring. If we see anything larger going on, we're certainly going to give a public update on that. But right now, no threats to speak of.
It's my expectation that on Monday, a privilege resolution will be introduced that will charge the President of the United States with inciting sedition. The vehicle of a privilege resolution will allow the House to move expeditiously to consider the article of impeachment on the floor of the House of Representatives, to vote it out, and to send it over to the Senate, without having to go through a traditional Judiciary Committee markup. The question that some have asked and suggested is whether the House would set a bad precedent by moving so swiftly on impeachment and not necessarily pursuing the ordinary process of going through the Judiciary Committee. The answer is simple. This is not an ordinary moment. This is not an ordinary president. This is an out-of-control president who is a malignant narcissist, pathological liar, and psychopath at the same time. Donald Trump may be in the Twitter penalty box, but he still has access to the nuclear codes. That's a danger to the American people. So we can't proceed as if this is ordinary. We have to proceed because this is extraordinary. Sedition is extraordinary. Insurrection is extraordinary. Domestic terrorism is extraordinary. That's why the House of Representatives is prepared to act immediately. It's a privileged resolution, which means that it can be called up to the floor no later than 48 hours after its introduction. Any further questions? Yeah, let me stop you on that question because I want my colleagues to answer it. And the question is, what is the point of, I'll repeat it. The question is, and I'm going to allow my colleagues to answer, what is the point of impeachment if it may not make it to the Senate? And let me just simply say, and then I'll let my colleagues answer, the House of Representatives is a co-equal entity. We don't work for Donald Trump and we don't work for the Senate. We have a responsibility to do the right thing by the American people and then put it on the Senate to act.
You know, Donald Trump was impeached once. He was not removed from office by the Senate, but he's still impeached. He'll be the only president in the history of the United States of America to be impeached 2 times. Most importantly, it's not a symbolic thing. If the president is impeached, I believe that he loses his power under the Constitution to pardon people for the impeachable offense. He can no longer pardon people for anything related to this insurrection if he becomes impeached. That's the most practical, real impact of him being impeached. Of course, we would hope that the Senate would act and he would be removed, but that's the most important thing, I believe, is removing his pardon powers.
Second question, Lydia?
Can I say something? You know, he was impeached by the House one time. The Senate refused to act. And here we are, 5 lives lost. People in the Senate have to answer. Public sentiment is everything. So I hope that the American people put the pressure on Senate Leader Mitch McConnell to do right by the American people. Right.
Let me just give somebody any. Well, go ahead.
The second question is, if the Capitol rioters are domestic terrorists, what about the Antifa and the
Yeah, that's an irrelevant question. Next question. Last question.